The Murder of Katarzyna Zowada. The murder of Katarzyna Zowada, also known under the codename Skin, was the killing of a 23-year-old Krakow student studying religious studies, committed at the end of 1998 in Krakow, Poland. Shortly before the murder, Katarzyna's mother reported her missing. After taking the victim's life, the killer skinned her torso and amputated her limbs. The Krakow police experts from Southern Europe, and the FBI were involved in solving this case. Disappearance. In 1998, Katarzyna Zowada began studying at the Jagiellonian University. According to witnesses, she was a good person, albeit shy and secretive. In 1996, her father died and she fell into depression. People who studied with her could not say much about her. She changed her field of study twice. Initially, she studied psychology, but after one semester, she abandoned this direction. Soon, she began studying history, but also quit this subject. Her third field of study was religious studies. It was known that she was fascinated by the music of the Grateful Dead. A few weeks before her death, she stopped attending classes. It is believed that Katarzyna Zowada met the killer while buying records at a fair. The victim's mother was convinced that Katarzyna was attending classes. On November 12, 1998, the student went missing. On the day of her disappearance, the girl was supposed to meet her mother at a doctor's office in the Urotsa estate at 6 p.m., but she never arrived. She was dressed in a velvet jacket and black jeans. In search of her missing daughter, Katarzyna's mother, Boguslawa, hired a detective. Discovery of the body and start of the investigation. On January 6, 1999, the body of Katarzyna Zowada was discovered by the crew of the ship Łódź. The ship was near the Dąbie Barrage on the Vistula River in Krakow. Body parts got tangled in the propeller and immobilized the ship. The next day, the crew reported the find to the police. Fragments of skin and the body were fished out on the same day. Initially, it was assumed that the corpse was destroyed by a ship sailing on the river, but upon examination of the discovered body fragments, it became clear that the skin of the torso was intentionally removed and the limbs and head were amputated. The skin was prepared in such a way that it could be worn as a suit. DNA tests were conducted to identify the victim. This study was one of the first in Poland. At the end of 1999, the investigation was halted. During the investigation in 1999, a man who often walked along the Vistula River was selected as a suspect. He hated women, and at least one of the walkers claimed that he harassed her. However, the police excluded him from the list of suspects. In July 2000, non-biological traces were discovered and used to check suspects. The search did not yield results, prompting the prosecutor's office to stop the investigation in 2001, and the case was handed over to a special group unofficially called the X-Files. A few years later, a psychic was hired to solve the case. Considered connection to other murders. In Brzezinski, a student from Russia named Vladimir killed his father and scalped him. He sewed the scalp into a balaclava and put it on his head to impersonate his father in front of his grandfather. Vladimir studied at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. The police entered his home on May 31, 1999. During the house search, no traces of Katarzyna were found. Vladimir was deported to Russia, where he was convicted of killing his father. New evidence. As a result of discovering remains of vegetation and organic fibers, the investigation was resumed in early 2012. A decision was made to exhume the victim's remains for an autopsy. The study was conducted by experts from the Institute of Forensic Research, Department of Forensic Medicine, and the Forensic Laboratory from the police headquarters in Krakow. Experts claim that the found remains were not from an aquatic environment, and the occurrence of the plant is limited to only certain places. Thanks to this, it was established that the murder was not committed on the river. It was also determined that the woman was tortured before death. In early 2014, Krakow investigators called in experts from Southern Europe and the FBI to solve the mystery. According to FBI specialists, the killer must have been a harmless freak. In February 2014, the investigation was handed over to the Appeals Prosecutor's Office in Krakow. On October 14, 2014, the investigation was extended until January 31, 2015, but no other body parts were found. In October 2016, the prosecutor's office presented new facts in the course of the investigation. On October 17, 2016, a team of divers searching for the body of Ewa Tillman began to search the bottom of the Vistula River to find corpses. The search area covers the territory from Wawel to the Dombi Barrage. The group of divers was equipped with equipment for detecting anomalies under a layer of mud. Opinions and hypotheses of experts. According to specialists, the killer was inspired by the movie The Silence of the Lambs and the character Buffalo Bill, who killed women and skinned them. It was assumed that the killer could be a butcher or a doctor. Psychologists suggested that the killer consciously chose this student because, being in depression, she was an easy victim. The skin photograph was supposed to be a kind of fetishism, and the murder was intimate. Some dispute this motive, believing that sexual killers repeat their crimes. According to the X-Files, the offender may have found a source of satisfaction, and he did not commit further murders. It is not excluded that the killer went abroad, died, or was imprisoned for another crime. According to some hypotheses, Katarzyna Zowada was supposed to die as a result of an accident or commit suicide while another person used her body. The characteristic stretch marks on the girl's skin were described in the medical literature as being able to appear only in 3 cases: as a result of falling from a great height, a car accident at speeds above 80 km/h, or a shot in the mouth. Ultimately, the theory of death by accident was rejected. According to one of the hypotheses, the killer and the person who made the skin photograph were not the same person, and both these operations must have been performed by different criminals. Arrest. On October 4, 2017, Robert J., a 52-year-old resident of Krakow, whom his friends and neighbors called a freak, was arrested in this case. Robert J. had been considered by investigators several months earlier. Robert J. was known for his love of torturing animals, bodybuilding, and practicing martial arts. He knew the victim, did military service in a religious hospital, where he assisted in performing autopsies, worked at the Institute of Zoology, where he skinned animals. He was a taxidermist. He was fired from the institute after killing all the experimental rabbits. In his psychological profile, experts pointed to sadism and a tendency to stalk women. After the murder, he underwent a religious fascination. It was established that he visited the grave of the murdered girl. He also showed a propensity for eccentric behavior, dressing in women's clothes, peeping at neighbors. According to some reports, he was supposed to maintain bisexual contacts. He also stalked women. One of his neighbors, who was followed by law enforcement, followed him. He described the murder in his diary. That's the story that happened in Krakow, a glorious and very beautiful city. I apologize for the punctuation, at least it's there at all. As usual, I am ready to answer all questions. I can continue translating from Polish if something is of interest.